There seems to be no end to the long-standing diplomatic tensions between, you-know-who, US and China. The White House on Sunday revealed that China has allegedly been operating an intelligence unit in Cuba for a few years now, which it upgraded in 2019. The comments by a White House official come amid reports that Beijing was planning to set up a spy base on the island, which is located just off American shores. However, both US and Cuban governments cast strong doubt on the report. He further elaborated that the issue predates Joe Biden's presidency and is not a new development. China has been spying from Cuba for some time, and it is well documented in the intelligence record. He said that the previous governments did not make much effort in this regard, despite being aware about the issue. Meanwhile, Chinese officials have responded to these claims and have accused the US of spreading rumors and slander. Cuban Vice Foreign Minister also dismissed US media reports as totally mendacious and called it a US fabrication meant to justify Washington's decades-old economic embargo against the island. The developments come a week before US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to China on 18th of June. Now, his visit marks the end to long-delayed diplomatic talks between the two superpowers. Tensions between US and China have been at an all-time high, marking the worst phase of diplomatic fallout between the two nations. In February, Washington had cancelled an official visit to Beijing over a suspected Chinese spy balloon that reportedly flew over the United States. In May, leaders of the G7 bloc, led by the US, had unanimously agreed to counter economic and military coercion, indirectly targeting China. Earlier last week, US-China tensions reached an all-time high when, in a risky incident, the warships of both countries escaped a quote-unquote dangerous interaction in the Taiwan Strait. US has increased its presence in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly around Taiwan. This comes in response to China's aggressive expansion into its neighboring regions. All right, for more on this, we are being joined live by Edward P. Joseph from Washington, D.C. He is a senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University and a foreign policy analyst. Welcome to the broadcast, Edward.
Thank you very much.
Edward, Blinken's long-delayed Beijing trip is now being planned for the next week. There are no balloons this time, but it seems allegations of spy activities in Cuba have again surfaced closer to Blinken's visit. What can one expect from the meeting? Has it set a wrong tone before his visit already?
It has, actually. This is quite surprising. Normally, before these type of encounters, you see efforts by the capitals to reduce tensions and avoid anything that could put the other side in a defensive posture. And that's what these allegations about spying from Cuba do. It's not that it creates some new grievance on the part of the United States. Obviously, clearly, the U.S. knew about what China was doing in Cuba for a number of years now. But what it does is it creates the context where China has to be in a defensive posture. China has to say, no, this is not true. China has to push back against what it sees as comments and pressures by the United States working with close allies in Asia on what is termed economic coercion. So it's kind of surprising. This is not typically what you see in the run-up to this kind of a visit. And we have to remember that the Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit was originally canceled precisely over an allegation of spying, that is the spy balloon and the fact that the U.S. downed this Chinese spy balloon. So this doesn't really create the conditions that one would expect for a successful meeting. Please.
Edward, now if I were to just spin that question on to the other side, now can things get any worse? You know, even with these allegations, the way the relations, the diplomatic talks, the way they have dwindled over the past few months. Now, if I were to just compare February from now till those few months back, so much more has happened. Probably, did they have a better chance at more diplomatic talks in February than they would have now, even if they do continue meeting? Because in the last few months, China and Russia's ties have also come to the fore, which were probably not there in February had he visited back then.
I think your assessment is correct, that had the visit gone forward at that time that it was originally scheduled, that the visit of Secretary of State Blinken, I think that the chances of some type of reduction in tensions between the United States and China the possibilities would have been improved. We've seen, you're absolutely right, the 3-day lavish visit of President Xi to Moscow, visiting with President Putin, who's been increasingly isolated and is clinging to a desperate hold on Ukraine after his unprovoked invasion of the country, a catastrophic miscalculation on the part of President Putin. That type of support, these type of conditions have aggravated relations. On the other hand, we shouldn't be completely pessimistic here. Let's remember, last month, the very well-known head of the CIA, William Burns, a longtime American diplomat, had a visit to China. And this visit would not have taken place if there were not high-level desire in both Beijing and in Washington to try to advance and reduce tensions. And of course, to answer your first question, could it get worse? Of course, it can always get worse. You mentioned this close brush in the South China Sea between naval vessels of the U.S. and China. Obviously, this situation could get much worse if there's any type of a military confrontation. And we know, of course, that Taiwan, China's aims and designs on Taiwan, an independent state, has aggravated the situation and is lurking behind many of these tensions. Please.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast, Edward. Always a pleasure to have you here. That was Edward Joseph joining us from Washington, D.C., from the Johns Hopkins University.
You're welcome.